In this movie, we're going to be talking about working with rollovers, but using a method called the Pixy rollover method. As you can see, I've added in a couple of different images here. The first one, as it says, is a Pixy rollover using CSS3 positioning. And when I roll over it, you can actually see the CSS3 transition taking place. It's illustrating exactly how the Pixy rollover method works. In the second one, I'm using the Pixy rollover method without CSS3 transitions, and it's just blinking on and off as you can see here, but what we're actually seeing is not the swapping of two images, but rather just one image that's being repositioned on the hover state. In this last one, I have a dual image. And as you can see here, this one is the traditional method of just taking one image and exchanging it for another image on the hover state. So, why do we work with the Pixy rollover method as opposed to working with two images? First of all, let's take a look at those images. I'm going to click on the assets, and as you can see in the assets area here, there are a number of different files. Number one, we can see section 3 as one file. Its width is 320, and section 3 over with the same 320 width. However, let's look at section 1 Pixy, and there's even another one that should be in here. Let me just refresh. Section 2 Pixy. So what's going on with these particular files? Well, as you can see, there are two states in one file. So this file is actually longer than just the one. So we have 640 for the width of this particular Pixy rollover. So why do we use the Pixy rollover method? In this situation where I have two images, the only drawback to that is the simple fact that if I come to section 3 PNG and then I roll over it, the overstate may not have had a chance to load yet. So the first time that we roll over this is primarily when we're dealing with a site that's hosted on a server. If the second image is a little heavy, as this one kind of tends to be, if we roll over it, there may be a lag before we actually see the second image as it takes its time to load. But when we are dealing with the Pixy methods, we only have one image. So when we see the first image, we're actually already anticipating that the second image, which is still part of the same image here, the second state, has already had a chance to load. So when we roll over it, there's an instant change. It's not going to take a second or blink into view as the double image method may do. Well, let's go to our CSS and let's examine exactly how this is happening. First of all, if I look at the code view, you might remember that each of these sections has a class called sec1, 2, and sec3. If we go to our layout and we look at our code, we can see the different section areas. Now, you might remember I said that we have a little bit of a CSS3 transition on the first one. I'm not going to get into that too much right now because we will explore that a lot more fully later on in an upcoming chapter. But let's examine the basic information that I have here. The background image is positioned. It's the Pixy one, which is longer. The background repeat is set to no repeat. And most importantly, the background position is set to 0 on the left and the top. However, when we roll over, the background position is then switched. We move it to a minus 320 pixel dimension on the x-axis. But on the top, the y-axis, it's still at 0. So in essence, it's sliding it. And that's why I've included the transition here to show you exactly what's happening. It's taking 0.3 seconds to do that. However, as you can see in the section 2 class, I've done exactly the same thing, although I'm using a different image. But it is a Pixy image, so it's 640 on the width. And as you can see, because there is no animation transition in here, it just blinks from one position, 0, 0, to minus 320, 0 on the hover state. So those are the main ways of dealing with rollovers using CSS, or in this case CSS3, as opposed to using the traditional method of working with JavaScript. So now that you know a little bit more about how to deal with rollovers, you can integrate rollovers anywhere. Could be up here, there could have been small little graphics that we used instead of these rather large ones that I'm using here to accentuate my point. But this is not unusual to see used in navigation systems, among other things. We could have even done something with the title over here if we wanted to, just to have it blink into view. So that's a little bit about the Pixy rollover method. Come back in the next video and we're going to start styling the rest of our file.